Well, hello. Welcome to the Northwest Chamber's second webinar of 2023. We are excited to have our presenter today, Rich Austin of Trembling Giant Marketing. And it looks like people are still kind of trickling in, but we are going to get started because we have a limited amount of time. We have a lot of great information from a very knowledgeable source. So I would like to do a couple little housekeeping things. There is a Q&A as well as a chat area. So as you are having questions, go ahead and send them either in those areas, and I will help facilitate and moderate that for Rich. Once again, this is being recorded, so you can come back to it at any time on our YouTube channel, as well as share it to anyone you'd like to share it to. So let me get started by introducing our presenter today, Rich Austin. He has over 20 years experience in advertising, branding, and design. He is the managing partner of Trembling Giant Marketing. And Trembling Giant has been helping businesses and guiding businesses and organizations since, I believe, Rich, 2014, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they help to guide businesses and organizations in all aspects of their marketing. They also offer a local print advertising opportunity as well through their My County Direct publication. So I just want to begin because, like I said, we have limited time. Don't forget about the Q&A section as well as the chat. And Rich, this is all yours now.
Great, Kathleen, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for coming to attend this webinar. I hope that you get something very valuable from it. Today, I want to talk about how to evaluate your marketing's impact. So we're going to be exploring things like return on investment and audience profiling and those types of things. And I'm going to move pretty quickly because I want to make sure that there's some time for questions at the end. So I'm going to go through and get hit from point to point, try to be in an even fashion, and then at the very end, maybe circle back and open up for questions. So please, if you have questions, write them down, submit them to the Q&A, and we will go from there. So the very first thing that you want to think about is you want to focus on attracting the right customers. And what I mean by the right customers is the customers for your product or service. There's a lot of people out there who are not the right customers for you for a number of potential reasons. And so we want to make sure that the things that you're doing are evaluated to look at exploring who are the right customers. And so one of the best ways to do that, you're going to be hit up with lots of different marketing people from different industries who have a very specific thing that they're trying to sell. And a lot of these products have a lot of value and benefit. But as I said before, the start is to focus on the correct audience. So when you are being sold to, which is not a bad thing, but when you're being sold to on some marketing, on different marketing deliverables, you want to be deductive to really understand what it is you do before you do it by asking SMART questions. I'm sure many of you are familiar with SMART goals, right? They stand for being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And so what I would say is whenever somebody's talking to you about a marketing solution or an advertising solution, you want to ask them the questions about how their product has SMART goals. How is it specific? How is it measured? How does it achieve its goals? What's its relevancy to you, to your business, to your industry, to your customers, and what's the time frames built around it? So, as I said at the very beginning, where you want to focus on understanding your audience and that customer profile, you want to ask who your audience is. And so when I say who's your audience, what I'm talking about are really three things that, and if you have these boiled down three elements in your audience profile, you're off to a very strong start. The demographics, their interests, and their behaviors. And these are going to be very, very general because most audiences are fairly large, but they're somewhat honed in within these categories. So demographics, you're looking at things like geography, age, income, and then there might be a myriad of things that are specific to your business, right? So, let's say, for example, you are selling a product like dresses, right? Which might be much more geared towards women. So therefore, you would want to include women as probably a demographic, as well as other people, audiences you might identify who would be interested in dress wear. Now, when you switch to something like interests, you're going to be, you want to try to understand who your audience is, or imagine that audience. If you're in touch and you have a good solid understanding of who your audience is and what they like, what are some other brands that they would be interested in? Where do they shop? What's their, what other types of things are they inspired by? Maybe if they're currently working with competitors of yours, why they might be going to those competitors, and identify what they like and what they respond to. And then the other thing you want to have in your audience profile is trying to understand or have an idea of what your audience's behaviors are. What types of activities do they do? What types of purchases do they make? Things like that. So the next piece about that is you want to identify all of the tools that are available to you. So the tools that are available to you are going to be limited by the criteria that you have kind of set. One of the biggest limiting criteria is going to be your budget. So you are going to want to take your budget and you're going to want to use it as a consideration for how you're going to break out the different things that you're doing, because it's very, very important to have a diversified marketing funnel and a diverse arrangement of channels that you're communicating out, advertising channels, marketing channels that you're using to communicate out to your potential new customers. And what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna break through some of those core channels that I've identified, the ones that we like to focus on here at Trembling Giant Marketing, and talk about what are some things that you want to look for those channels to be doing for you as you evaluate them. So one of the first ones is you're talking about awareness marketing tools. And this is very important because when businesses are considering things like return on investment, which I will speak in a little bit more detail later, they're generally looking at the bottom line. They're looking at the converted sales numbers. And one of the things that you're doing that's the farthest away from that is your awareness marketing. So when you are doing awareness marketing, I suggest at the simplest level that you focus on two main factors. You want to focus on the total number of impressions, how many times your marketing has been seen or put in front of potential customers, and to create that awareness, and what your cost is per every 1,000 one of those. It's called a CPM, and it's a very common metric that a lot of different businesses will use to measure in a very palatable way to measure what that could look like. To give you an example, a Facebook advertising campaign that's awareness focused might have a $5 to $6 per 1,000 impression CPM, or a billboard campaign. If you find a region where the rates are relatively low and the traffic is reasonably high, you could have a $1 to $2 CPM rate. So it's really important to try to understand what the rates are of the cost per 1,000 impressions. And these are things, if somebody is trying to sell you on a tool and it's an awareness tool, those are two ones that you want to focus on getting the information for. And then if you can, measure them and monitor them. The next funnel is a little bit squishier for evaluation purposes, and it's the information funnel. And these are things that you're going to want to do to provide more detail about your business. So before somebody has decided that you're a candidate for them to do business with, or that they are going to do business with you, they need to understand what it is that you have to offer first. And so the biggest measurement that you're looking for here, like I said, it's a little squishy, is going to be the likelihood to engage. So this is where you want your tool to have opportunities, or to create opportunities to incentivize engagement and drive people down a rabbit hole. One of the biggest information tools at your disposal, and where it has some of the biggest impact, is going to be a website. And there's a lot of opportunities for you to try to grab interest and drive people down. And so anything you're doing that's trying to fit this funnel of your tool, you want to focus on increasing the likelihood of consumer engagement. The next one is going to be the consideration level of the funnel. So now we're starting to get closer and closer and closer down to the end sales point, right, where you're actually closing. And to measure the effectiveness of any consideration marketing tool that you're doing, you want to be looking at things like dwell time which is how long somebody stays in the space where they're exposed to whatever your marketing effort is or your advertisement. You want to, and usually there's a lot of, so another example of that is there's a lot of stuff in the digital space. You can measure that with things like click tracking, how many times do people click on it, or how many times do people visit a location that you're going to. So that could be a physical location, it could be a digital location. Any way to try to track those things at the consideration level. This is the measurement metrics that you want to use to evaluate if the money you're spending is having the impact that you want. And then, of course, right before the sale, the last component where everybody feels like they want to put all the money into is the decision phase. And it's the most tantalizing because this is the place where people decide to do business with you. This is the place where that precedes the transaction. And so everybody wants to do something that's going to make somebody choose to do business with them almost immediately there. And so in that space, there's a lot more things that you want to be monitoring, because this is where you want to really see some of the specifics of where that conversion happens. So any leads, you want to be monitoring lead capture, because that could come in a myriad of different ways. The online forms is a huge resource here. So if you're sending people to a digital space, you want them to submit an inquiry or a contact form or something. Getting phone calls, having people pick up the phone, reach out. That's something else you want to be able to track. You could feasibly do that for different tools by having custom phone numbers, or you can still just record call volume. There's enhanced systems that you can do to monitor these things. But at the very least, just tracking the call volume in general is a good help. Emails is another one that you want to be monitoring. So you try to evaluate how much email traffic you're getting from the efforts that you're taking. And if you have a physical location, of course, you want to be monitoring walk-ins. How many people are coming into your store. This is not going to be the number of sales. This is always going to be the number of intakes, because these are different numbers, and you are going to see, you're definitely going to see a shift between those two. For example, I'm going to pick on Google AdWords for a quick example. So Google AdWords, you're going to deliver a number of impressions, right? So the awareness piece that we were talking about. And then from those impressions, on average, across all Google advertisers, you've got about a 2% click rate, okay? So that click rate is going to driving people to your site, which is usually some kind of lead capture mechanism or something of the like. And then from there, Google AdWords on average has about a 5% lead generation from that, or they like to call it conversion, so a conversion rate, because they can't guarantee the sale, and they can't follow it all the way to the sale for the most part, unless you have an exclusively online store. But what they can do is they can definitely tell you how many people went all the way down and became sort of that hot lead who is very interested in your product or service. And that's only 5%. So different mechanisms are going to have different return rates, and you want to be able to measure what your return rate is. So let's see. I got a quick question here. I'm going to take a quick moment to answer it. Is there a specific software used to track dwell time, clicks, and visits? And I would say that if you're looking at, so the first thing you want to do is you want to evaluate how you are doing business. And as I said before, you want to look at what potential tools might be brought to you that someone's trying to sell you on, or that you're constructing as part of your process to build out your business. There are different ways to kind of track these things, but in a digital sense, the best and the most typical is Google Analytics, which I think they just rolled out like within fairly recently, Google Analytics 4. And just FYI, if anyone out there who's watching this is already using Google Analytics and Google AdWords campaigns for anything, there's a July timeline that you definitely want to make sure that your Google Analytics is updated to Google Analytics 4. This is obviously going to be very dated, not going to be helpful for people who watch this video in the future, but for now, those are great resources. So Google Analytics is a great way to track clicks and visits. If you're doing an online advertising campaign, they're going to have a lot of those things built into it. Facebook advertising campaign, Google AdWords advertising campaign. I'm sure lots of other social media and digital platforms that facilitate that are going to already have built-in things like clicks and visits. Now, when it comes to other media dwell time, oftentimes in traditional media, things like that, you need to rely mostly on market research, right? So you'd want to look at reports out of the Meredith Corporation, Nielsen, something like that, who's going to tell you about how long, given a certain type of media, how long people, when they observe it, what they average the dwell time tends to be. And so going back to one of my first slides where I talked about that you want to be deductive of the things you choose by using SMART goals, that's one of the SMART goal questions you should be asking the person who's trying to get you to do something, right? So you want to ask them, what kind of dwell time, right? And if they're being honest with you, or if you need to go do some back research, it could be kind of shocking. So for example, some of those online digital ads that have really great impression counts also have very abysmal dwell time numbers. And so that all adds up. So if you let's say rely exclusively on a Facebook advertising campaign and you're not doing any other things to supplement it or as part of a larger structure, you might find yourself in a position where you are woefully disappointed with the return you're getting on the sales generated from just that campaign. And if you do a deep dive, what you might see is, wow, my advertisement is getting in front of a lot of eyeballs, but those eyeballs are only looking at it for a fleeting moment of time. And the engagement rate with those advertisements are very, very low. So that's an example of how you want to assess the different tools you might use using this list and say, what's the right mix? So again, to build on that, I find myself often recommending something like Facebook advertising to my clients, but the reason why I do it is because it's a flexible, effective awareness tool. And when that's coupled with other mechanisms that help people with consideration and decision-making, then it creates a powerful synergy. Hopefully that helped fully answer that question. So that moves on to what most of the business owners really, really care about, which is understanding their return on investment, right? And to do that, you want to be measuring it against the tool. And so really kind of like boiling this down again, I just want to reiterate, on awareness tools, you're talking about impression rates and impression related information. On information tools, you're looking for engagement. How long can you get somebody in a place? How long can you keep them there? If you're focusing on a digital platform, Google AdWords is a great tool for, or not Google AdWords, Google Analytics is a great tool for telling you where people came from, how long they hung out for, and where they went on your site. And so if you're focusing on a digital platform and you're building out ways to retain that engagement and share that information, that's a great way to see how effective you're being at it. And then consideration, you're looking at dwell, you're looking at clicks, you're looking at visits, and things like that. And then when it comes to decision, while there was that long list there, what that all boils down to is leads. How many leads is it generating for you? And leads are these sort of very hot opportunities. So now I'm going to get a little bit granular, and this is the part that you can put into action. And if you wanted to kind of like screen grab this or something like that, and you can even follow up with me later to do an even deeper dive, this is where I work with people to get them to really understand their numbers. But if you want to create sort of an ideally, and it is some work, so I apologize for that, but ideally you want to have some kind of in-system return on investment evaluation. So you want to look at all of those individual funnels that I talked about: awareness, information, consideration, decision. And also really quick, I just have to apologize. I am focusing only on new customer acquisition front end stuff. There's a whole back end of retention and referral marketing. I'm not talking about that here for the purposes of this conversation. I wanted to focus on new customer development. So you want to look at those funnels and you want to evaluate the return on investment of each one of them. And so in order to evaluate the return on investment, you're not looking at the end sales goal yet. You're looking at what did I get for what I spent versus for that goal. So you want to start by evaluating, let's say, the gross profit on whatever that product or service is that you're promoting, that you're doing your marketing or advertising for. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term, when I'm referring to gross profit, I'm talking about after all of your cost of goods, but before you assess your business's expenses, which includes things like advertising, payroll, rent, those kinds of things, those fixed expenses. So revenue minus cost of goods kind of gives you a boiled down version, your gross profit. Whether you want to look at it in summary or detail, that's on you. So next, what you want to do is you want to be adjusting your gross profit by only adding in your marketing advertising funnel expenses to track against your margin. So once you know what your GP is, now you're going to and you know how much you spent on your marketing pieces, you can start comparing that to your overall, or taking that away from your gross profit, right? And so now we're just introducing this one element so we can focus on it. Then you're going to be tracking your customers. This is much easier for someone with a few customers than it is for someone who does like a large volume of retailers. But if you can, you want to try to track your customers against your specific marketing or advertising, right? So how did they find out about you? Where did they come from? What percentage of your customers and how much they spent came from these different things that you're doing? So as you evaluate that, you can look at and say, oh, I got these 10 customers, and those 10 customers were worth, I don't know, $10,000, let's just say, because that could be a range of businesses, especially service-based businesses or something like that. So now you got $10,000, and then that was your revenue, and then you get rid of all your cost of goods, and you have whatever that remaining amount is, and now you have an amount that you're matching up against that. So then we're going to look at things like averaging your cost per item by customer impacted. So by item, I'm talking about the different channels that you're doing. So for example, let's say in that month, you spent $500 on an awareness marketing campaign, and the 10 customers that you had, or whatever, you identified, they were all impacted by the awareness marketing campaign. Therefore, $50 of your awareness marketing was spent on driving those people in. Ultimately, what you're trying to figure out as you're doing this is you need to be able to identify which customers came in, were impacted by the different marketing channels, and what customers came in who weren't impacted by either you weren't impacted by the channels at all, or which channels they were impacted by. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a storefront that's highly visible. You might get walk-ins just by having your physical storefront. And if you find that you might be doing other things, but half of your leads are being generated by people who are walking in, well, your storefront is one of your marketing channels, right? There's awareness that you have through there while it's a centralized area. There's information marketing that's happening through there. So there's investments that you can make in improving your storefront, improving your signage, improving your place of business, which all factor into and should be considered a marketing expense, for driving customers to come into your business. And so now you're saying, okay, well, if half of my customers, if half of my revenue is coming from that, then it makes a lot of sense for me to put, a healthy portion of my investment of my marketing into making sure that that storefront and that visibility is key. Or you might look at those numbers and say, I have this much availability, or I have this much walk-ins, but I want business from other places. So now I'm going to focus on spending elsewhere because I want to drive more business from other sectors. So these are all the questions that you want to start asking yourself that by doing this analysis, you're going to be able to figure out. But anyway, at the end, you want to aggregate your averages to see what that gross profit rate is per client and identify, and that's how you really can get to the bottom of what's my return on investment on each thing that I do. And I just want to I wanted to say that in specific detail because a lot of people boil ROI down to, I spent money on this and this is how much I got in sales. And that's not the way you want to do it. That really only applies to the decision-based marketing. You really want to look at if you're whatever you're spending on awareness marketing, because that's the farthest one away. So I'm using that as an example. You really want to focus on like how effective was that at doing what it did in making an impact for the down funnel marketing options that I'm doing to drive that customer ultimately. All right, so with that, that's basically the presentation. I now want to open it up to see if anybody has any questions.
Well, Rich, that information was phenomenal. So thank you so much for tapping into all of your knowledge and sharing that with us. And I'm sure that, we have a million questions to ask and we only have a few minutes. I would like to ask a question though.
Of course.
If you had to give one piece of advice for someone, a small business who said, okay, 2023 is our big year. We're going to do some marketing this year. But they're struggling because they don't know, do I do digital? Do I do print? Do I do radio? Like how does somebody decide on which type of route they should take initially?
This is how. They should start 100% at the who is your audience, right? So this is why I led with this. Thank you so much. This is because this is a great question. Is that you need to understand who your audience is and to understand how you evaluate the tools at your disposal to use for them, right? So as you noted, we created a print solution. We didn't create the print solution to be the be all end all for anybody, but it fills a niche, right? It does a very strong job at filling a certain type of deliverable. And that's for people who are very locally, regionally focused. So if you were in one of those situations and you knew that was in your toolkit, that might be something you want to seriously consider. I wouldn't say want to go one or the other. You want to identify who it is you're trying to reach and then open yourself up to what are all of the digital and traditional solutions that are available to me. And then do they meet these SMART goals and how are they going to drive that business to me?
Perfect. Thanks so much. There is another question. Are there general quote unquote good numbers for dwell time, clicks, etc.?
So they're good numbers. So gosh, there's in a lot of cases, I would say that the numbers are what the numbers are. And so it's hard to say. So really what you want to do is you want to find out what these averages are. And then as you're monitoring the things that you're doing, you want to see, am I coming in above average or below average? So for a great example on that, like I said, I use Google AdWords, if we want to talk about clicks, for example. That click rate of the ad is about 2% for them. Now, in the context of that, that's because they are delivering the ad to people who are specifically looking for your industry or your deliverable. You compare that click rate to something like a Facebook advertising campaign, and the average Facebook advertising click rate is about 0.1%, significantly less than Google AdWords. So you might say to yourself, well, clearly Google AdWords is a better solution because it has a better click rate than the Facebook advertising. But hold on a second. They're doing two different things, right? Facebook advertising is going to be more about awareness. And the Google advertising is going to be more about consideration marketing. So they're at different levels on the funnel. And also, when you look at how much you spent, the number of impressions you got from that Facebook advertising campaign, it could be 4 times the number of impressions that the Google AdWords campaign delivered. So when you ask the specific question, are there good numbers? They're always relative, and they're relative to the different channel that you're using, and they're relative to whatever industry standards are. You can look at broad averages, you can look at specific averages.
Okay, so Rich, we have to kind of wrap it up, unfortunately. Everyone attending, if you look in your chat, I had put the Trembling Giant URL. So please go check them out, and you can reach out to Rich as well, by contacting them. So please click that link and go check out Trembling Giant. I would like to thank also Trembling Giant for being a corporate sponsor of the Northwest Chamber. They did our recent rack cards and our folders and everything, so they do fabulous work. So Rich, I want to thank you again. Oh, chat is disabled. Sorry, guys. Not sure why that is. You can go to Trembling Giant barraged.com. Is that right?
TremblingGiantMarketing.com.
Okay, sorry.
I apologize, it's so long.
TremblingGiantMarketing.com. Please go to that and check them out. They have a lot of different solutions, including print. They can help you from A to Z in your marketing needs. And Rich, you brought up a subject I might want to have you come back. The referral and retention marketing, I think could be a really interesting webinar. So you guys keep your ears and eyes open. Rich and I will talk about maybe coming back and doing that topic as well.
I'd love to.
So we thank you, Rich, for taking your Monday morning out for us. And thank you, everybody who attended. Once again, this has been recorded and it will be in our Northwest Chambers YouTube channel very shortly. So you can go and share and rewatch if you'd like. So everyone, thank you for attending, and I hope that you have a fabulous week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rich. Bye.